Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome everyone officially to our commemoration. 20 years later, it's remarkable to think that 20 years have passed. A number of us were standing on this very bridge that morning of September 11th, 2001. And our thoughts at that time and our memories of that time are very profound. We are going to have a ceremony of prayer, of acknowledgement, of reflection. And we're going to begin with our national anthem. I'm going to ask everyone, as you are able, to stand as Chazan Shamash leads us in the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's
and salute
light what so proudly we hailed as the twilight stands streaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the I'm going to ask that we remain standing for a moment of silence for those who fell on and after the tragic events of 9/11. Ladies and gentlemen, in Jewish tradition, the horn, the shofar, is sounded as a wake-up call. It is meant to wake us up to our responsibilities, to wake us up to our potential, to strive for and create a better world for us and for future generations. And we are honored to have present here Manny Alani, who is going to sound the shofar for us as a clarion call for each and every one of us. Everybody may be seated. Temple Israel of Great Neck has had a ceremony of commemoration every year since the actual events of 9/11, and each and every year thereafter, we have stood in this space, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, and we have had a commemoration consisting of memorial prayer and also consisting of reflection, and we have featured individuals who have taken some part in the response to 9/11. This evening, we have the honor of hearing from Dr. Andrea Katz, who is a member of Temple Israel and a member of our board of trustees. And she and her partner, Susan, are active participants in so many aspects of the life of the Great Neck community and beyond. Andrea is a licensed psychologist, and she retired after 32 years as a psychologist and administrator at Creedmoor Psychiatric Center. She treated severely and persistently mentally ill adults. And she has shared with me some of the challenging times that she has had professionally reaching out to and serving this very challenged community. I want to say on a personal level that Dr. Andrea Katz, Andy, is somebody who brings brilliance, insight, and also deep, deep humility to every professional and personal interaction. She brings her heart and her soul. Her Jewish identity is a very strong shaping element in who she is as a professional and who she is as a human being. And as you will hear, she played a role on 9/11, bringing comfort and counseling to those people who needed it most. So it is an absolute honor to give our community the opportunity to hear some words of reflection from Dr. Andrea Katz.
I'm going to read because it's
Yep.
gonna get attacked by the mic. All right. Like many of you, early on the morning of 9/11, 2001, I found myself marveling at the magnificence of the day, blue skies, the light casting shadows that signaled the coming of autumn, actually very similar to this morning. At work, I went about my early morning routine as usual until 8:46, when the world as we knew it would never be the same. Like many of you, my memory of that moment remains vivid. Where I was, what I was doing, who told me. And I'm sure, like most of you, I immediately began taking a mental inventory of my family and friends and tried to locate them to find out if they were safe. When I reached my sister, who lived in Greenwich Village, she had decided to pack up her family and head for Great Neck. My parents were in France. I had a good friend who worked in Tower 1, and it took me a grueling 3 hours to find out if she had made it out of the building, which thankfully she had. I was lucky, but sadly many others were less fortunate. For those of you who don't know me, the rabbi just said, I'm a psychologist, and one of my specialties is in the area of trauma. I was a member of the disaster response team at Creedmoor, which was prepared to provide emotional support in the event of any type of disaster. After going to New York City Red Cross office on the afternoon of 9/11, we were directed to return the next morning. On 9/12, most of the mental health professionals were assigned to the task of talking to family members and friends searching for their loved ones. But the 6-member team I was with was sent down to ground zero. Lower. At this point, I will try to paint a visual picture of some of my experiences over the 6 hours I spent at ground zero and tell you about some of the memories I have lived with for the past 20 years. On the way downtown, we were told we couldn't take photos because the area was considered a crime scene. When we got down to the World Trade Center area, it was hard to know where we were because there was so much debris everywhere. Metal was bent in odd shapes. At one point, the van stopped, and out the window was a metal object that was piled on top of debris about 6 feet or so off the ground. It was completely stripped of everything except its silver metal. I remember staring at it, struggling to figure out what it was, until I finally saw a piece of metal in a V shape at the top and realized it was a skeleton of a police car. Looking around, I thought to myself that this must be what a nuclear holocaust would look like. Once the van was parked, we were given hard hats, no masks, a box of apples and water, and were instructed to walk around offering responders the water and apples as we did so to try and engage with anyone who looked as if they needed a break or some support. Looking around the area, which was covered in white dust, which I immediately assumed was asbestos, I turned to my friend and said, "This is going to take 20 years off of our lives." I couldn't imagine how I was going to help the women and men who were incredibly focused and dedicated to rescuing anyone who might be alive. It was really a testament to what people can and are willing to do, because many of these folks have been there from the morning of 9/11 and they just kept pushing. The ground was covered with papers, some singed at the edges from the fire, but nonetheless, they had fallen safely to the ground, unlike the people who were trapped in the buildings. A stuffed animal that had most likely been on someone's desk the morning before, now laid on the ground intact. As my friend and I stood at the base of the pile, we saw a few rescue dogs and many first responders moving toward the pile, forming a line. There was an air of excitement as we witnessed the last live person being pulled out of the rubble. There had been a firehouse by the World Trade Center, which was being used as a rest station for the responders who needed a break. We went in and the first responders ironically treated us as if we were their heroes. They were so grateful we were reaching out to them. The level of camaraderie was remarkable. While there, I noticed one young fireman who couldn't have been more than 20. He looked stunned and exhausted. I started talking to him and I suggested that he might want to take a little more of a rest. I was really worried about him. He said that no, he couldn't stop because all his buddies from his Staten Island firehouse were in there. He told me, "I'm the only one left." It was heartbreaking. As we walked around, I noticed that the responders had dazed looks on their faces, and I began to realize that we too were starting to look the same way. At one point, I spotted a Mama Teresa's pizza box. Anybody know Mama Teresa's in Garden City Park? And I remember a great sense of relief to see something familiar. In a crazy way, that pizza box was very grounding. After some time, we somehow found our way to One Liberty Plaza, which had no electricity, bathrooms in the basement, the morgue, and medical crews composed of mostly residents. We felt this might be a place where we could have some positive impact. The medical residents were forlorn. They had volunteered to come down to help with the injured, but there was no one to care for. They were standing near the morgue. The smell of death was horrific. National Guardsmen had been assigned the task of escorting the dead to the morgue, and there was a somewhat formal ritual that they followed. I watched as two young men accompanied a body bag into the building on a gurney, and I couldn't understand what was going on as the body bag appeared to be empty until I saw a tiny lump in the bag and realized they were bringing in a rescued body part. The lobby was spotted with responders. They were tired, and so many had vacant looks on their faces. We stumbled across the K-9 unit, and they were exhausted. The dogs were also sleeping or resting. One of the women cops asked us to play with the dogs as she explained that they were really depressed because they were trained to find live people and they hadn't been finding any. After playing with the dogs, we needed a break too, and we went outside of the building to stand on a giant balcony which overlooked the pile. At some point, there were 3 loud blasts of a whistle, like a work whistle, those factory whistles, and then we saw everyone run as fast as they could. The ground at that point was so unstable and there was dangerous debris everywhere. I figured if these brave women and men who now look terrified were running for their lives, we better do the same. Amazingly, we ran as fast as we could and somehow didn't trip on any of the obstacles on the ground. But we ran so fast and as far away from the buildings as we could that we accidentally ran out of the perimeter and we weren't allowed back in. Walking back to the Red Cross with our hard hats on, our absent looks of trauma, I noticed that people wouldn't even look our way. On the walk uptown, I called my sister who cried and was very upset because she had heard on TV that One Liberty Plaza had collapsed. In reality, it had not, but as we were running, it did suffer a partial collapse on the roof while one of the smaller World Trade Center buildings had fallen. My sister had told my parents that I was down at Ground Zero that day. The next day, when I spoke to them, my father said in his typical Jewish fatherly way, "I'm so proud of you. Don't you ever do anything like that again." During the following year, I had pneumonia and 2 surgeries. I screamed in my sleep every night, and luckily, after a year, that went away. In the subsequent 2 years, the team went back to Ground Zero to help support family members at the memorials. At one of those memorials, I had the privilege to hook up with a family who had lost their relative, a fireman from Staten Island. I took his elderly mother under my wing, which gave the other family members time for their own grief, and I ended up spending much of the day with them. At some point, the mother handed me a small box and asked me to pick up some of the dirt from the footprint of the towers. She turned to me and said, "We have no remains. This will be all that we'll have." To this day, I remember what the last name of this fireman was, but in reality, nonetheless, the memory of his family's pain is very real to me. Memory works in odd ways. It can be crystal clear, etched in our minds, or it can be faded, distorted, fragmented, or totally forgotten. If we are old enough, we all have memories of that day. And if we're not old enough, we have the memories of what others have told us and what we've read and seen. We have each individually done with our memories what our psyches could and can bear. Each person is different, and we have each tried in our own fractured way to put together the events of 9/11. For me, the challenge over the past 20 years has not only been to remember these experiences as clearly as I can, but to understand the impact they've had on me. One of the things that personally impacted me was my ability to surpass my anxiety and my fear to act. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an anxious and sometimes fearful person. When our van was assigned to go to Ground Zero, I remember immediately turning to my bandmates and saying, "Is anyone nervous about this?" But I decided, and it was a very conscious decision, to push myself forward despite my terror. This really impacted me because I realized that when it came to the greater good, I could push myself beyond my own automatic response to run in the other direction. And that if I was called again to serve, I would, because for me, being able to help others is a great privilege. However, 9/11 has left me more fearful in other ways. And although I push myself to do the things that I fear, including sometimes going to synagogue, I still experience that fear. The other thing that really impacted me following 9/11 was the brief sense of unity. Following the attacks, many felt more unified as Americans. People from all over the country wanted to know how they could help. Friends from abroad called and sent emails, not only to see how we were, but to let us know that they stood in solidarity with us. As a community, a country, we feared together, we mourned together, and we tried to console each other. At that time, we attempted to embrace our differences and felt the strength of what it meant to be unified. Ironically, 20 years later finds us in yet another crisis, but in a very different place. Rather than coming together, we're divided. Remembering is an important aspect of Judaism. Memories guide and inform us, and they are a part of the fabric of Jewish life. As I see it, one of the challenges before us is to use our memories and understanding of what brought us together after 9/11 to help us find a way to unite in our current struggle against the virus. On this beautiful evening, as we come together to collectively remember the events of 9/11, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Andy, on behalf of everybody here, I want to thank you for your very heartfelt words. I want to thank you for the incredible service that you provided on that day and that you have provided subsequently. There was a very well-known short story written by the American writer Delmore Schwartz called "In Dreams Begin Responsibilities." It's about somebody who has these dreams about his parents, and he wakes up and he realizes that he has a cluster of responsibilities for how to face his family and how to face his life. And I would just offer, in response to the heartfelt words that you shared, a kind of a variation on that. In memory begins responsibility. And you are charging us to remember these events in ways that encourage us to feel responsible to create a safe and a just society and a unified society for all. And thank you for your service, and thank you for the message. I also want to take the opportunity to thank those who are present here, some directly responsible for enabling this event to occur, and others who have served our community, some who served on 9/11 and beyond 9/11. I want to thank the Men's Club leadership of Temple Israel. I want to thank Rabbi Schweber for all of his effort in bringing this together. I want to thank Saddle Rock Mayor Dr. Dan Levy. I want to acknowledge Nassau County Legislator Ellen Birnbaum, North Hempstead Town Board members Lee Seaman and Monica Murphy, former Village of Great Neck Justice Mark T. Birnbaum,
School Board President.
Village of Great Neck Plaza Justice Richard Kestenbaum. And I want to acknowledge with deep gratitude the members of Vigilant Fire Company who are with us tonight. Heroically on that day, and who act heroically on so many days for all of our behalf, for our community. And I want to acknowledge as well Rabbi Marin Chari, who has served as the chaplain of Vigilance for many years, bringing his wisdom and guidance to them as he has brought to so many of us over the years. I'm going to ask everyone to rise as Chazan Shamash recites the memorial prayer for all those who fell on 9/11 and thereafter.
מלא רחמים, שוכן במלומי, אמצא מנוחה נכונה, כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים טהורים כזוהר הרקיע הסירי לנשמות כל אלה שהזכרנו היום לברכה. שהלכו לעולמם בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. ענן מרחמים אסירם בסתר כנפך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום בשלום ושלום המשקפותיהם. ונאמר
Forgive me, I want to also acknowledge and thank Alert Fire Department who are with us. My apologies. We thank you for your service on 9/11 and each and every day. Thank you. God, creator of all, we ask you to grant perfect rest among the souls of the righteous to those who died on 9/11 and in the days following. We ask that they rest in perfect peace. We ask you to bless the souls of all of those who died, some of whom died while saving others. We ask that you give perfect rest and that we sanctify who lost their lives. May their souls be bound up in the bonds of life. May they continue to serve as a blessing for each and every one of us. And we say together, Amen. Chazan Shamash is going to lead us in America the Beautiful. You can find it in the Siddur on page 396.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of gray, for purple mountain majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of gray, for purple mountain majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
We're going to go to the last verse.
Oh, beautiful for patriotry that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the commemorative portion of our evening. We are truly grateful to the members of Vigilance and Alert who are with us, to all of the officials. With the Friday evening Shabbat service, everyone is welcome to remain, and those who wish are welcome to excuse themselves at this time. We are turning in our Sidurim to page 1. We're going to start with the Mincha afternoon service, and that will be followed by Kabbalat Shabbat, the preparation for our Sabbath. Tila Adonai David Aviv Yeveret Kol Basar Shem Kol Sholei Olam Moed V'Anach Nevarech Yamei Atavi Adonai Hallelujah. Ikatavi Fegash Merava Yamad B'Rati B'Tevi Mizmachutei B'Chayechon V'Yimachon V'Chol Beit Yisrael B'Galav Yisman Karim V'Yimru Amen. Yeishmei Rabba Alam Lamei Amaya Yiparach Yishtabach Yipar B'Shemamina Sevira Davi Televi Talal Shemei Kedusha B'Richu Le'ela B'Kol B'Chatav B'Shirata Tushbachatav V'Nachamata Damiran Me'Yama V'Yimru Amen. I'm going to begin the Amidah and then we will continue privately. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor V'Hanarah Eladon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Bnei Yaakov V'Zocher Chastei Avot U'Mevigo El Ibnei Bneihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Zochreinu L'Chayim Elachafetz B'Chayim V'Chotvenu B'Sefer HaChayim L'Ma'ancha Elohim Chayim Melech Ozeru Fokeinu Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Abraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Itim Atarach L'Hoshia Mechakel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayim Itim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Nofim V'Rofech Cholim Matir Asurim U'Mekayim L'Ratoli Shinei Apar Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot T'mito Melech Meimitu B'Chayel Matzmiach Yeshua
Michamocha Avraham Zocher Zchalim B'Rachamim. Amen. The condition of Olam Geshench Makashimot B'Shmei Yaakov Karze El Zevi Amar. Kadosh Kadosh
the door Vador Nagid God Lechal Netzach Netzachim Kedushat Chanatish V'Shivchacha Eloheinu Mepino Le'amush Le'alamoed Ke'amelech Kadosh HaKadosh Atah Baruch Atah Adonai HaMelech HaKadosh.
Amen.
Spend a few moments in quiet prayer. Pages 3 to page 9. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon Lecho Shalom. Ki atahu melech Adon Lecho Shalom. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. V'tol b'necha nevarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol etz u'b'chol sha'ar b'shlomecha.
Shalom Rabba Yisrael Alecha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Alecha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Adam Kedash Berama, Amati Berak Nitzev Yomim B'Chateva Chayacham V'Mahon V'Chok Yisrael. Agad Avis Man Karibi Lo Amen. Eish Berama Le'Alam Le'Amaya. Barak Yishtabach V'Kavich Yomim Yisrael. Yisrael V'Levi V'Lav Shmei Kedusha V'Tifu. Le'Eila Le'Eila V'Kol B'Chatav V'Shirata V'Chatav Take about to Israel, for down to Bishmaya be one day. Shamar Babit Shemaya, the Chaim, Alated up for Israel be one day. Ose Shalom, King of Mahu, Yasef Shalom, Alated up for Israel be Amen. Alated the Shabbat, Nato, Nato, take to Lali, celebration, Shalom, Asani, Yeharato, Villa Saman. Shalom Samkakenu Kahem Vigorale Kefora Ayahu Orim Umishtachalim Umotim Lifnei Melech Malachei Hamlakim HaKadosh Baruch Mar Behaya Adonai Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz Vayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo Mourners Kaddish for mourners and those observing Yartzeit, page 12. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabba ve'alma tivra kirutei ve'amlich machutei ve'chayechonu ve'yomechonu ve'chayedecho beit Yisrael va'agala u'bizman kari ve'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam lo me'omaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yinaseh ve'yitadar ve'yitaleh ve'yithalal shemei tekudshah ve'richu le'ela mikol bechata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata da'amiran da'alma ve'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba mitshemaya ve'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'romav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Amen. So as the sun continues to set, as the breeze gets a little bit more cool, we transition into Shabbat, which is a day of rest and also a day of renewal. And I hope that we will feel some of that rest and some of that renewal as we enter Shabbat together. We turn to page 14 for Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh Hamarachama Mishofata Eritzona Yarutzata Imohayan Yishtachaveh Emun Hadarat Yerablo Yediduta Minofetsu B'chotam Adonai Zivaolam Nashivonat Avatam Anaena Efanana So we are delighted to have Elliot Ganjian here with us, preparing for his bar mitzvah, which is in a few weeks, and he's going to be helping Chazan Shamash lead the service. We turn to page 15, Lechu Niranena L'Adonai.
Lechu Niranena L'Adonai, Nariah V'Sholishem.
Nikadna fana b'todah, Izmirot Nariah. אל תחשו בלבכם כמנהגכם בחנון.
Arba'im Shana Akut Bedor Ba'oman Antohe Levavhem Lehem Uyadid Rachai Asher Shvati Be'api Yevohu El Menuchati.
Shiru Adonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Adonai, Kol Haaretz. Shiru Adonai, Baruch Hu Shemo, Basru Meyom Yom Yeshuato, Sapru Magoyim Kevodo, Lechol Ha'amim Nifleotav, Igadol Adonai. Kula me'od norahu al kol Elohim ki kol Elohim hamim elili Adonai shamayim asa Hodeh hara lekanav Oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho Amul Adonai mishpechot ha'amim, Amul Adonai kavod va'oz, Amul Adonai yevod shemo, Seul milcha ubo lechasrotav, Lai 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 yishtachavu l'Adonai. שבינו מפניו כל הארץ, אמרו בגויים אדוני בעלה, עתיקותיו בתימות, ידי נמים במישרים, יסבבו השמיים בתגל הארץ, עיר החיה. יענו שדי, בכל אשר בו, די די די, אז ירדדו כל הצייה, לפני אדוני כי בא לשפוט הארץ, לשפוט בצדק, והעמים באמונתו. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Page 17.
Adonai malach tagel haaretz, yismechu ihim rabim.
Anan b'Sibima.
Baruch HaTzadik, or yishmei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hudu lezecher kodsho.
Page 18.
Mizmor
Shir Adonai, Shir Chadash, Iniflot Asah. מחצוצרות וקול שופר, נערות שמחה וכף יחד הרים ירננו. לפני אדוני כי בא לשפוט הארץ, לשפוט בצדק, בימים במישרים.
Adonai malach yigzur amim, yoshev keruvim tanim ta'aretz. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishachavu lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, mizmor leDavid.
Everybody please rise, page 20.
Havul Adonai v'nei Eli, Havul Adonai kavod v'os, Havul Adonai kevod shemo, Yishachavu Adonai lehadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod yirim, Adonai Almayim Rabim, Kol Adonai Baruch, Kol Adonai Behadar, Kol Adonai Shover Arazim, Vaishaver Adonai et Arzeh Halavono. Vayarkidem kemo ekel levanon v'sirion kemo ben re'emim, levanon v'sirion kemo ben re'emim. Kol Adonai yotzev avoteinu, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai Kodesh, Kol Adonai Yeholer Hayalot, Vayechesov Yeharot, U'Echalot, Kulom Bekavod, Kulom Kulo Omer, Kulo Omer, Adonai, Mama Uyashab, Vayeshev Adonai, Melech Leolam, Adonai Yod, Lema Uiten, Adonai Yivarech et Amo, Bashalom. Et Amo, et Amo. Et Amo,
Everybody, please be seated. We greet the Shabbat Queen with the singing of Lecha Dodi, page 21. Thank you. Yesher Koach, Chazak u'Baruch Te'el.
Lecha dodi likrat kala la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Lecha dodi likrat kala la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Ishmiranu el ha'miyuchad Adonai Echad, Shemo Echad, Shemo Tiferet V'Nitila. Echad Odi Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Likrat Shabbat Tefumer Echad, Ki Mekor HaBeracha. Merosh Mikedem Nesucha, Sof Ma'aser Machshava Tefila. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Mikdash Melech Yimelucha, Umitzei Mizochatecha. Rach Shevet Be'emek Habacha, Be'u Yachamol Alaychem La. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Itnari me'afar umi, Livshim Miktev Tifantev Amin. Hayat Elishai Bet Alachmi, Korva El Nafshi Ge'ala. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Itoreri, Itoreri, Kiva Ore, Kumi Ori, Uri, Uri, Shida Beiri, Kivoda Dodai, Allah Yifnila. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, la 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 B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Lo tevoshim v'lo tzikani, ma tishtochachi u'ma tehemi, bach yechesu ani eyami v'nimneta yiratila. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Ve'hayu l'shisa shosayim v'rachaku kol ve'mal'ayim yasis alayim Elohayim kimshos hatan akala. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Kamela. Yaminu Smoti Tifroti Et Adonai Taharisi Ayarish ben basi ben nisbecha v'na'im alecha adoni likrat kahala.
Please rise, your faces.
Ori v'shalom atereba b'simcha u'v'tzahala totemune am segula b'mikala echadodi likas kahala Shabbat
Everybody may be seated. This song is when we fully accept Shabbat as entering our souls, our hearts, our lives. Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat, page 24.
מזמור של יום השבת, טוב להודות אדוני, וזמר לשמך היום. Oye Bundesera, Deshenim Beranani, Ihu Lehagi, Yashar Hadonai Tzuri, Elo Avlataro.
We call out my Ibrahim Adonish Prayamazir Bamarom.
עדותיך נמנו מאוד לביתך נאווה קודש, אדוני לאורך ימים.
Amen.
Invite mourners, those observing Yortzeit Sal, please to rise. We will recite the Kaddish together, page 24. Yit Gadal, the Yit Gadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Alma, Dibra, Kirute, V'Yamlich Machute, V'Chayechon, V'Yomechon, V'Chayetim, V'Beit Yisrael, V'Haggadah, V'Yisman, V'Arib, V'Yibru.
Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Barach Le'olam Lamed Amaya.
Yitbarach, V'Yishtabach, V'Yitba'ar, V'Yitromam, V'Yitnaseh, V'Yihadar, V'Yitaleh, V'Yitalal, Shemei D'Kudsha,
Richu.
Le'ela, V'Kol B'chata, V'Shirata, Tush B'chata, V'Nechamata, Za'amiran, B'Alma, V'Yibru.
Amen.
Yehei Shlama Rabami, Shemaya B'Chayim, Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Yibru.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom, V'Ruma, Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Yibru.
Amen.
There is the same Hebrew word for wind is the Hebrew word for spirit, and that is ruach. So there's a lot of ruach here tonight, a lot of wind and a lot of spirit. Everybody please rise for Ma'ariv, Arvit, the evening service, page 28.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Le'olam Va'ed. חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים. ואהבתך תשים ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננת לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובדרכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך ובשרתם לאותה ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבת על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Wenn Antis Guru Asitane kommt, es war Time mit seinem Pushen. Asher und Seti. Adonai
Adonai Lechem Emet.
Middle of page 32, we recall the successful crossing of the sea. We give thanks, gratitude when we escape from a place of danger to a place of safety.
מלכותו ורצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ומרים בני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך אלוהים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, לא רק תהילות עושה. מלכותך רבנך וקיים לפני משה, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעם ועד. ונאמר כי חדר אלי יעקב וגדול ביד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני כעם ישראל.
Remove the evil forces that surround us, shelter us in the shadow of your wings, guard our coming and our going. Page 33.
ושמות תתנו בואנה לחיים ושלום בעתה וערולה, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני. הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, והירושלים.
Everybody please rise, page 34.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, יתקדש שמי רבי, למד יברכותי וימליך מלכותי, לחייך עוד יום ובחיית לכל בית ישראל, בהגדה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יש ברבם וברך, יעלה מעל מעם הים, יתברך, וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרב ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקדושה ברכו, אלא לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, תמיד רק בעלמה.
Take a few moments for private prayer, the Amidah, pages 35 to page 38. We add all of the passages for Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We continue on page 48, Kaddish Shalem.
יתקרא שמי רבי, נאמרתי רק נתיב מכוחותי, בחיי חול ובמחול, ובחיי בית ישראל, פגלו בזמן קריב, אמרו, אמן, יש מרב המלך, לעלם המלך, רק תשתבח כתבה, בתרום תעשה, ותדע ותעלה ותלש, מלקודשה, מריחו, לילה לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, שמשפחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, אמרו, אמן. תתקבל צלות תפתחון תכו ישראל, הודם אבות משמיה, אמרו, אמן. יש לה רבים שמיה, בחיים עלי נבוא כל ישראל, אמרו, אמן. עושה שלום ממרומה, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כאויי הרצון, ולא שמנו משפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהן, בגורלנו ככל המונה, אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. כי המלכות שלך תמלוך בכבוד, כך כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, חיה אדוני, למלך כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
I invite mourners and those observing Yartzeit Sal to remain standing. Everyone else may be seated to recite the Kaddish on page 52. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabah ve'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich machutei ve'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayedecho beit Yisrael va'agala u'vizman kariv imru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabban Barach Le'alam Lomei Omayat. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yihadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kushah v'yichul le'ela mikol b'chata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shma marava mitshemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imru hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. We're going to end in a moment. I want to just actually also acknowledge that she was here for a while, Rebecca Sassouni, chair of our school board, Great Neck School Board. And journalists often don't acknowledge their sources, but I'm not a journalist, so I'm going to acknowledge Mark Katz as the source of many things, whose leadership was instrumental in this evening's proceeding the way that it did. So Mark, thank you. And Yishar Koach. We are going to conclude with Adon Olam on page 54. Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'terem kol yitzir yivra Le'et nasa echevto kol Adonai Shemo Nivra Ve'achare Kiflot HaKol Levado Yilov Nora Ve'u Haya Ve'u Oveh Ve'u Yiyeh V'tzimara Ve'u Echad Ve'sheni Le'achshiro le'afira Ve'li reshit ve'li tachlit Ve'lo ha'oz ve'am Yisrael Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Ko'ami Ve'tzorchem li ve'etzara Ve'hu nisi u'hanosi Ve'nat kosi Ve'yom Efra Ve'yado Afkiruchi Ve'tishan Ve'ahira Ve'imruchi Gemirati Adonai li Ve'lo ira.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for joining us for this commemoration. We do need to give this bridge back to our peninsula.
If you can help put the books in the milk crates and put the chairs in the car, that would be great. Thank you. And to all those in Zoom, Shabbat Shalom. We're going to end with a nice sunset. There you go. Shabbat Shalom to everybody on Zoom. It's a beautiful sunset.